Greetings of peace and harmony. My name is Ram Hotep, and I'm broadcasting on behalf of the number 13 SignsAstrology.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. On this particular episode, I'm going to talk about the Sabbath day, or also known as the Shabbat. Today is the official Sabbath day. I want to send a shout out to all my Jews, Hebrews, so-called Hebrews, and just those Seventh-day Adventists, those particular people that are hip to the Shabbat, and those particular people that observe it. Now, I'm not religious. I don't subscribe to any type of religion. However, when you start to study Judaism, really it's not Jewism, but it's Judaism, you'll find out that Judaism is not a religion. It's dealing with a culture that you can accept. And when you start to study the Shabbat, or the so-called Sabbath, you'll find out that this was being observed way before the Jewish religion and a lot of your religions that end up taking up the Sabbath day. This whole thing goes back a lot further than that. Biblically, if you were to study the Bible, you would find out that the Sabbath, or the word Sabbath, first comes up in the book of Genesis. And in the book of Genesis, it talks about 6 days or the 7 days of creation. And the seventh day was the day that the Lord, or the Yahweh, because that's who it really was the Yahweh, was the day that the Yahweh rested. Also, shout out to my Nubians. I want to put that in there too, because Nubians are very hip, to the Sabbath day and things of that nature as well. So yeah, it goes back to the book of Genesis. And that's where you get a lot of this information from. Now what happened is a lot of different religions adopted the Sabbath. Some people believe that the Sabbath is on Sunday. Some people say it's on Saturday. The term itself really means a day of resting. And if you really get into it, there's different Shabbats or Sabbaths. You have the occult Shabbats, which there are 8 of them. I won't really go into too much of the occult aspect here, but the occult and members of the occult also observe the Shabbat. One of the more popular ones takes place during Halloween. That's the one many of you know about, but this actually Halloween, and that day goes back to the Shabbat. And I'm going to do a video talking about the occult Shabbat more around that time of year. Hopefully you guys can remind me as well. Send me an email if kind of get busy during that time of year, just to remind me to do a video on that. But this particular episode is about the concept of the seventh day, because that's what I want to go into. And what does it mean when it says that the Lord rested, or rests on the seventh day? Lord means master, or Adonai, or you could say really it was the Yahweh who was the actual title of the Lord resting. Now, when you research Yahweh, a lot of people aren't going to like this, but you have to follow me now. Yahweh translates to a deity of war. Yahweh ends up being the deity that goes into man becoming God. In order for man to become God, man has to go through the rank of a Yahweh. And the Yahweh is dealing with the material. A Yahweh is one who masters the material aspect of the physical plane, the matter aspect. So in the occult, you got to follow me now. In the occult, when we talk about Yahweh, we could easily say Yahweh could translate into what Satan really was. And this is where a lot of people get mixed up at, or whatever, because a lot of people may get confused and get angry and say, well, you're trying to say that Yahweh, even some of my fellow Jews out there will be very upset about this. But this is an occult channel, and I'm not here to disrespect your religion. I'm going into the meaning of Yahweh, what it means, and I'm also going into what the mission of man is here on this planet. Because man is a dualistic being who has to honor the devil's playground, or so-called Satan's playground, as well as the Most High. The Most High's playground. And even in the Bible, many of you that follow my videos know that it talks about the Most High being the Elohim, or the Elo, which is the Most High. And then you have the Yahweh, which is another type of function of a deity or entity that goes more to the physical aspect of God. When you talk about Yahweh, you're going into arm, leg, arm, head is what the 5 percenters would call it. This is the same thing. because this is dealing with man as he masters the material aspect of himself, or not really masters, but balances. That's the key word. Balances the material aspect of him or herself with the light aspect or the memory aspect. And the light aspect is the part of yourself that's not physical. It's the part of yourself that may be emotional, or it may be mental, the abstract part of yourself. So when you get into understanding Yahweh, this is understanding how man becomes God. And I'm going to explain this to you and make it a lot more plain. So when you study the Sabbath, the Shabbat, or the Sabbath, as I said, it goes back to Genesis. And on the seventh day, Yahweh rests. Who is this Yahweh? This Yahweh would have been the head of a group of deities or beings that came to this particular earth and manifested on this particular earth and brought life and physical creation to this particular planet. Because in science, they teach that this planet was created pretty much by coincidences, a series of coincidences that just came to be. And when you study any amount of science, you're going to find out that either it was a freak of nature that created us, or it was a well thought out plan by a group of beings that knew what they were doing. So to understand Yahweh is to understand when the Most High, or when the God of the Bible said, let us make man, because this was the Most High of that particular group. So when the God of the Bible said, let us make man, us, you notice it's us, which means this is a group of beings or scientists really that were responsible for manufacturing life here on this planet, or creating life here on this planet as to what it is today. Life itself definitely occurred in nature, but the type of life, the type of beings that we are, we're what's called compound beings. And the only way to become a compound being means that you are composed of different types of beings put together. So we have all of the elements in our very nature, which makes us a compound being. We have ether, we have air, we have water, we have fire in our makeup. So we're compound beings. So this means that it had to be some being or some entity out there that had a thought out plan to create us. And this is when you get into the story of the Anunnaki and the different beings. So it's taught that when you start to study the different texts, like the Sumerian texts and the Numi Elish, the Gilgamesh epics and things of that nature, they talk about how creation was broken down into 7 periods. And each period would last, according to the researchers, would last approximately 7,000 years, according to those particular people that researched the Sumerian texts. And they teach that the group of scientists that came down to this planet spent 7,000 year periods creating man, which would total out to be 49,000 years. So it took 49,000 years to get to this point of the type of being that we are, because this is an experiment. So we are a type of prototype of being, but there are other beings that came before us. Homo sapien, Homo erectus, things of that nature, reptilian type of beings, Homosaurus. So you have different types of beings that came before us in this point of creation where we're at. So this is what the 7 periods go into. So it took 49,000 years for us to get to that point. And on the last period, or the last leg of that, which was the last 7,000 years, the Anunnaki basically took a break. They needed some time off or whatever. So this is where the original Shabbat would come from. But it goes a little bit deeper than that. I'm going to take you a little bit deeper. The Anunnaki came from, before they came to this earth and started to partake in this project. Actually, they started this project in Mars, believe it or not. But so before man was on Earth, man was in Mars. So a lot of the 49,000 years took place on Mars before Earth. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. Like, we're not indigenous to here. Even this type of being that we are, man, we were created on Mars and put here on this planet in an enclosed garden. So when you start talking about the Garden of Eden goes into when the ancients called this planet Tiamat, because this planet was a fertile garden. And the Anunnaki put all of the seeds and all the herbs that we would need and everything we would need, medicine, drugs, everything, recreation, everything that man and woman would need to feel nurtured. However, this started out at Mars. And the reason why the Anunnaki even got into the whole Sabbath thing was because many of them came from Saturn. Saturn was their home planet. So when you hear me talk about those particular beings that were a part of the order of Luciferians and those beings that fell, What you have to realize is that some of these beings could have easily been Anunnaki. It's just like saying that somebody's a senator, a father, a politician, and say, for instance, a chauffeur. It's possible for a person to be all of those things at once. And this is the same thing when you talk about somebody being a Luciferian versus being an Anunnaki. An Anunnaki could be a Luciferian, or they can be a part of the higher order, of the order of light. But when you start talking about those beings that fail, all of those beings that fail and became physical beings had to be a part of the order of Satan, the order of Lucifer, because this goes into the order of mastering form and formality, and basically the physical aspect of creation, the physical aspect of life. So those people that get into worshiping so-called Satan or Yahweh or whatever you want to call them, they get into worshiping a powerful entity like this because of the type of power and structure and organization that it teaches you. So the Anunnaki, they came from that type of background. So they would partake in the Sabbath, and they always rested for 7,000 years, every 40-some thousand years. The Anunnaki always would take a break, and they always would take a rest. So that's not new. That came from the rings of Saturn. Some people say there's 7 rings around Saturn. If you notice that, and you get into Saturday even itself, most people observe the Sabbath on Saturday. Saturday comes from Saturn Day. So this bears witness to the fact that the whole concept of Saturn worship goes into the Sabbath holiday. So all of the pagan stuff that people hate in religion, you can't really run from the pagan aspect of religion, because the pagan aspect, religion was founded off of pagans. Pagans started religion. And people hate that. They don't want to hear that, but that's who started it. The group of pagans that decided they was going to come together and organize and start a new teaching and create a God, one God versus many. And this is what religion is based on: monotheism. Mono meaning the Greek god of sarcasm. You can research that. Mono is a sarcastic deity. I don't know why they chose monotheism as a term. I don't know why they chose to put monos in there as, like their chief deity or whatever, because you guys are up under monotheism. So you're up under the concept of it being one God. And this is kind of like sarcastic. It's like a joke, really. You know what I'm saying? Because they're looking at and they're laughing at you, because they know, the authors and architects know that there's many entities and there's many deities out there. So should one observe the Sabbath? I leave that up to you. I mean, how you do it, what time of year you do it on, which day you do it on, that's up to you. I believe, in paying homage definitely to those particular beings that created us. So definitely want to put out a little bit of energy, for it during that time. Maybe take off work and just kind of reflect and make that a very meditative day, because Saturdays are great for meditation anyway, and great for balancing the spirit with the flesh. Great for abstaining from things that you like, foods that you may like. So this is why, some of the Jews on Saturday, they may not eat any meats. You know what I'm saying? They only eat the vegetables on Saturday, or some of them may eat fish. Well, they do fish on Fridays a lot of times, but definitely like on a Saturday, a lot. I'm not saying every Hebrew or every Jew, but those particular people that are really trying to honor the Bible know that Adam and Eve was put into the enclosed garden, and they were commanded to take off on the 7th day and rest on the 7th day with the gods, because man was basically the vicegerent or the representative of the Anunnaki here on this particular planet. So when you talk about, like, why should one get into not really worshiping Satan, but get into honoring Satan, or get into just paying homage to Satan, it's because if you like anything about physical life and anything about the physical reality and the 5 sense reality, no matter how you look at this thing, guys, it's Satan's playground. The 5 sense reality is Satan's playground. It's based on temptation. You were put here as a test and as an experiment. And the only group that cares about humans and cares about humans' well-being would be those particular beings that created humans, because they have an invested interest. And this is where the Anunnaki comes in. We were the Anunnaki's project. And a lot of people don't like that, because you're, in so many words, I'm saying that we were Satan's project. But we are, because we live in a dual reality. So if you believe in one God in a dual reality, this is why it's sarcastic and it's funny and it's a joke. Because how can you believe in one God and you live in a dual reality? It makes no sense. You would have to, in a dual reality, you have to understand that The physical and the needs of the flesh have nothing to do with the needs of the spirit and breath. Has nothing to do with that. Just because you eat some food that you like and gratify your five senses and you like it, that's not going to solve a problem that you may have spiritually. This is why when you feed the flesh, it only gives you a temporary high, a temporary fix. So I'm saying all that to say that when you understand the Sabbath, the reason why you would want to take off on a Saturday or reflect on a Saturday, whatever you do. I mean, if you got to work, you got to work. I'm not into it like on a religion. I'm not a Jew, like I said, so I'm not into any religion. I'm not a Hebrew or anything like that. But I'm just saying, for one that really wants to get their spirit right, most people don't have to work on Saturday anyway. If you work 9 to 5 anyway, so you work 5 days a week, you're off on Saturday anyway. So just take the time to reflect over the fact that you're a physical, material being as well as a spiritual being. You want to take time to reflect over the fact that you are a spiritual being having a physical experience right now. So if you don't take the time to think about, we don't think about that. And it's very simple, but when you think about it like that, it's like a learning curve. It's like you jump through a hoop. It's like you jump through a time warp. You understand, like if you're going through a problem and you start to think about like, but hold on, I'm a spirit anyway. The problem seems to just lessen itself and it kind of goes away because you realize that you are a spiritual being. But then at the same time, you can't be too spiritual and forget about the fact that you're a physical being. And you might want to just have sex one day, you know? And you can't, to some people, they feel like, well, this is sin. If I'm not married, then, you know, I'm not supposed to be having sex. So I can't do that. And that's punishment. That's torture. That's slavery. That's mental slavery. So on Saturdays, it's a good time to take the time to balance. It's a good day for Ma'at because Ma'at deals with balance. The ancient Egyptians dealt with balance. So this is a good time to balance the physical self with the spiritual self. This may be a good time to, at nighttime, like during the Sabbath, most of the time it starts when the sun goes down on Friday, believe it or not. That's when the Sabbath really starts. When the sun goes down on Friday and when the sun goes down on Saturday, that's the end of the Sabbath. So a lot of times on the Saturday evening, that's when people break bread, go out to parties, and you gratify the physical part of your flesh. See, there's nothing wrong with that. But then you have to remember you're a spirit, so you have to honor that aspect. So the Saturn is basically to honor balance, to honor Satan, as well as to honor the Most High, Elion. So I hope that helped for people to understand the Sabbath, or, you know, those particular people out there. There's a lot of people who watch my channel that asked me to do a video about this a while ago to just get my views and opinions on it. Those are my views and opinions. Ram Hotep is definitely pro Shabbat. It's just that I may honor it and think about it a little bit different. I may do different rituals on my Sabbath than what you do, because I'm thinking about my Sabbath being, to me, Yahweh is the Anunnaki. To you, Yahweh may be, you know, God. And that's fine. Either way, you just do the rituals. It's all about the intent. So that's what people don't realize in magic is about the intent. And that's what sets the stage. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this video down. I hope you enjoyed this particular episode. And until we meet again, I'll leave you in peace.